Hello, welcome to the episode of Akrinos Access. I'm your host, Eric Matei, joined today by Mr. Chris Torchia and Mr. Chris Bell of the Blackstone Design-Build Group for a deep dive into a world that, well, more doctors need to understand, and that is constructing the dream, understanding the design-build process for your optometry practice. Chris and Chris, welcome to Akrinos Access. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Welcome. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Eric.
Yeah, that's great.
So I know we've got a lot of really cool things that we want to jump into in this episode, but I think the most fitting way to kick it off is just learn a little about yourselves, right? If you could provide, a brief bio and also specifically a bit about your journey into medical practice construction.
Sure. I'll start off. My name is Chris Bell and Chris Torchia. We're both managing partners for Blackstone Design-Build down here in the Atlanta market. Both of us actually kind of came to this market in a little bit of a different path. I spent almost 28 years with GE Capital, actually, and I was a senior vice president of business development for the business down here in the Atlanta market. I've been living here since 2002. Chris, you can talk a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so lifelong in construction, coming up on I just looked at the date the other day. It's coming up on 30-something years. All commercial construction, everything from hospitals on down to universities, research centers, stuff like that. All in corporate environment, though. Large companies. There was something that was missing, though. It was the ability to work directly with clients. There was that satisfaction level that just wasn't there. So Chris and I teamed up. He had a lot of the same concerns that there was, you were just part of the machine. And so that's where this is fueled by passion, backed up by experience and education. So looking to bring that to the clients today. And it's been a really, really rewarding a move for me. I know, Chris, we talk about it often. We often joke, we hear some little things that throw us back to the corporate days, and we all just kind of shudder in our steps and say, God, aren't we so much happier doing what we're doing? And then hopefully that passion shows through to the clients.
Yeah. And it's very fascinating that you guys say that because, as you guys know, the work that Akrinos does, we work very closely with emerging practice owners, and many of them looking to cold start or purchase a practice. They have themselves had, some history in perhaps corporate ranks and are ready to get out there and blaze their own trail. So outstanding stuff. So look, let's go ahead and maybe kick off this conversation now let's start by just defining what we mean by design build. What is the design build process referring to?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of, it's a delivery method, right? It's a process in which a client can engage services to construct a new office, a facility, a building, or what have you. There are a few of them out there, but design build is an integrated process which you take two different phases: the design phase, typically done with architects and engineers, and you combine it with the construction process. And today we'll talk a little bit about the pros and the cons. There are more pros than there are anything, right? So it's the blending of two phases together, two entities together, in which you have one point of responsibility. So if something goes wrong, you're not caught as a client or an owner stuck between your designer and a three-party agreement, where the designer has drawn something or created something, and then your contractor is expected to interpolate those drawings and build it. And for the most part, it usually goes pretty smoothly, but there are those times in which there are some rubs and bumps and grinds along the way. And clients often get stuck kind of in the middle, playing referee, if you will, right? There's cost implications that occur from this whole thing. Yes, as a client, you have time to control architects separately from your contractor. But look, at the end of the day, you're busy, right? You've got a practice to worry about. You've got other things to worry about. This construction process as a side road, right, for what you want to really do. So the design build process works really, really well to help keep you focused on what's important and keep you out of the things that are not important, like infighting and making sure that the process, little bits of information coordination kind of go smoothly.
And there's a couple of really important parts of the design build process that are key to our clients. And it's important to understand most all clients have a budget, a construction budget. And what the
correction, all clients have a budget.
That's right.
Everyone has a budget.
That's right. And what design build allows you to do is design to a budget. So
sure, yeah,
that's important, right? So it's not just going to an architect and saying, this is my dream space, and coming out and saying, let's take these plans out to bid, go to a few contractors and get a number, because oftentimes what's going to wind up happening is that you've designed a space outside of your budget. So that's one thing. The other key aspect to it is it allows, there's a big element of time. So one being, we can work and move down a path that allows us to get the project completed and the practice open in a timely fashion. So if there are changes, or if there's something that comes along during the process of the construction phase of the project, and we decide that we want to make a change, the doctor says, I want to do something a little bit different. What that allows us to do is, because we've teamed with the architect and we've now got one approach to this process, we can go to the architect, explain what the change is. The change gets done in a timely fashion without redraw fees. It doesn't slow the process down. We don't wait for the change order to be done. We keep marching down the path, knowing what the final outcome is going to be anyway. So speed of execution, certainty of execution, and continuing to stay inside the budget are the key aspects of the design build approach.
Yeah, that is so outstandingly powerful, because, and look, we've experienced it in our collaboration with clients there in that Georgia market. It's amazing to see the work that you guys have done, but it's also amazing how this process can really impact all aspects of this business. And whether this is a cold start, brand new practice from a vanilla shell, or whether we're talking about a renovation of an established practice, it's really important to understand. You mentioned the speed of execution, and that is such a critical piece, right? We can look at that cold start journey, and we can think that a week delay here, a 3-day delay there, a 4-day delay there, before you know it, over the course of this, 12 to 18 month project, those delays start to add up. And it's very painful when those delays add up at the detriment of the client. And for our viewers out there that may be wondering, Eric, what are you referring to here? When you're signing that lease, you're only getting a designated free rent period within which it's expected that your construction is going to take place. So if you're working with a contractor or a firm or a team that's fragmented, that there ends up being a delay here and there before the next step in the process, before you know it, you may find yourself going beyond your free rent period. And that's a situation that is never fun for anyone, right? So I'm really glad that you guys have kind of set the stage in helping doctors understand, A, the process, and then B, how a design build type strategy, working with a design build team, can set you up for success. Absolutely. Let's now jump into the process a little bit. So, for our viewers out there who themselves are eyeing that cold start on the horizon, or maybe have been, thinking, is this the right year for me to embark on my practice renovation? Walk us through the process, and maybe also touch on who is involved in that process, and maybe also shed a little bit of light on the timeline that goes into the design build process.
Sure, I can take that if that's all right, Chris. So what we'll do here is kind of start from the idea concept, right? So there's an associate or a doctor that has the idea that they want to start a new practice, or a second or third practice. The kind of first, what I always recommend is kind of start establishing who the team is going to be that you want to partner with. And I always recommend, look, especially on the construction side of things, where we're going to be attached at the hip for a certain period of time, that you put together a team of people that you like. At the end of the day, the cost and the price and all that is it's all going to be very similar. You're not going to see wide swings in what it's going to cost to build a space. So it's establishing
Pretty
it
sure
will be your banker. It will be your realtor. It'll be a contractor, in this case, a design build, which will also bring in a designer. You will have potentially some IT, information technology provider. There will be some equipment providers, and then there will be folks like Eric who are part of the team as well that will kind of really be instrumental in helping you through the entire process. From the period of when you have your team together and you say, okay, here is my team, until when that practice is open, I'm going to speak to really kind of a cold start perspective, meaning a typical practice that might be going into some sort of a strip mall or a medical office complex or somewhere where a building is already established, and we're going in and maybe having to do some demo work in order to get the space ready for your build out. I typically give guidance of about 6 months. So what that process is you're going to spend about a month up front kind of getting with us and the designer to design a space. How many exam rooms? What is the front end of the operation going to look like? Do you have a break room? How many doctors and how many associates will be working in the space? And we really sit down and spend some time going through that process. And then from there, once we have established what the space is going to look like, from a 2D perspective on a piece of paper, we'll then go into, submitting that into a permit, right? And a permit is going to typically, and again, I'm going to speak for mostly the Georgia market, but it's probably consistent around various parts of the country, of about a month, maybe 6 weeks for the municipality to approve your plans and get a permit. And then once we have a permit, you go right into construction phase. A typical fit out space of, somewhere in a few thousand square feet is going to take somewhere around 12 to 16 weeks. As guidance, it's a fairly linear process, unfortunately, sometimes because of the inspection process that you have to go through with the municipalities. But for the most part, 12 to 16 weeks is a fair guidance on the construction phase.
Outstanding. I like how you set the stage and helping everyone understand the team, right? And what we find, I know we've had some conversations offline about this.
Absolutely.
Right? When we see doctors trying to wear all the hats, and can get yourself in trouble really quick, right? Because in the same way that yourselves or myself can't be our own eye doctor. I mean, sure, we could Google things, we could go chat GPT things, try to get some advice on what we do to help our eyes. At the end of the day, you very quickly find yourself kind of getting out of your league, and the importance of having those professionals working with you. And that's why
Absolutely.
it's important to look at your project from a 30,000 foot view and understand everyone that is a part of the team, right?
Absolutely.
From lending to legal to HR to equipment to construction to obviously our role in it being the hub of the spoke of this wheel, pulling all this together,
Absolutely.
ensuring staying in budget and ensuring staying on time. I also like, Chris, how you pointed out the fact that, and to our viewers, I hope you all made note of this. It's about a 6-month process, right? It's about a 6-month process. It's not necessarily 6 months that folks are boots on the ground constructing the place. As a matter of fact, the actual construction is only, what do we say?
3 to 4.
12 to 16 weeks, right? But understanding there's other things that are going into it. It's not like you just call a contractor and you get plans by next week and they're in there the following week. I mean, Correct. They have to secure permits. Well, first you need to get through the ideation and be sure that everything works out and works out in the budget. Then we need to wait for the permitting process, which is something where no one on the team has immediate control over it. So we have that kind of external variable. And then obviously, as you said, although the construction process is going to be a linear process, there are going to be the proverbial monkey wrenches tossed in here and there. Right. And that is something where I will say to our viewers out there who may be in the Georgia market, in our experience, we're at Blackstone, hands down, one of the most professional, most timely design build contractors we have worked in across the entire country. So I've said this before, I'll say it again, fellas. Y'all need to find a way to bring Blackstone to all markets across the country because it's a very tight operation that you guys are running. And it's vitally important, again, to our viewers out there. you have your budget, but the timeline piece in the context of your build out is absolutely vital, because if they go beyond that allotted time and you find yourself now getting into paying rent, that's not a place we want to be in. So it's really important that the structure is there, the planning is there, the analysis is there, and then the team is put together to bring this thing to reality. Chris Torchia, I'd like to now bounce it over to you to maybe walk us through constructing the dream. And I know where Chris Bell was sharing with us a bit of this process from a cold start standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Torchia, maybe you can speak to this through the lens of that doctor who's been waiting to do the big renovation, right? Or maybe waiting to make the move from their leased strip mall into a building of their own. So perhaps you can walk us through a bit of constructing the dream for the established practice, looking at the opportunity, how to identify that opportunity in your practice, and then also help us understand the impact to operations and marketability of that practice.
Yeah. So, well, there's a lot to cover there. So if you were to, I guess the first thing, if we're talking about an established practice and we're looking to move to your second one, right, working with, again, putting that team back together, right? So trying to find your new location, your forever home, if you will. So location is certainly the big one. Once you get that sort of nailed down, we're talking about a new build, right? Allowed more time, right? So we're talking about sort of like a ground up opportunity. So you're looking at, roughly by the time you do the design process, a 2-year window by the time you do design, land acquisition, and all the other permits, which get entirely more complicated. But again, I think the process is much the same, right? Finding that right partner to help you round out your team with Eric and your internal team, but the construction, the design build is your internal partner, and you lean on them. You lean on them a lot, right, to avoid a lot of those pitfalls. If you're looking for a renovation of your interior space, an existing space that you really love where it is, that becomes again a little shorter of a window, but the logistics of living through a renovation process while you're in the space becomes more of a dance, if you will. Again, leaning on your construction partner about what's important to you, making sure you're able to operate while you're under construction. It's not something I recommend doing. To do a major renovation while you're in the space, it becomes uncomfortable for a lot of people, and eventually you're. Yeah, there's some thoughts there about your next space.
Yeah, outstanding, and I really like how you put that in context, Chris. Kind of the difference between renovating a space that you're looking to live through, which is carries itself some challenges needing to navigate through the process, right? And then also what you mentioned about constructing the forever home. And the construction of the forever home is a dream that many private practices have. As a matter of fact, it's very exciting when Akrinos, we've here come to have quite a reputation of helping doctors add locations and or move to that forever home, right? And it all starts with good, solid business foundations, a good financial forecast feasibility analysis, thorough eye care related geospatial and competitive market analysis. But that's just the starting point, right? Mm-hmm. Because realizing, and I'm glad you pointed that out, whereas perhaps building out a vanilla shell in a strip mall is going to be a 6-month project. If we're looking to buy a piece of dirt and go ground up, that 6 months is now a 2-year project.
And that's once you've acquired the land. I mean, so just finding where you want it could be a process unto itself.
Sure. Absolutely. And optimizing that through and through and realizing that you don't have to go it alone, right? This is where the importance of working with the team really comes into play to get you protected through and through that process. There were some other things also you mentioned. I think the importance for doctors to be realistic about living through the renovation. I recall prior to launching Akrinos, I came from the industry and being around practices day in, day out, every day, going into practices in a sales representative capacity, but seeing firsthand practices who were living through the renovation. And to your point, Chris, it can absolutely disrupt everything. I mean, the marketability, the patient experience, it's obviously is going to impact your personnel, right? Let's never discount your team through any of this. Never. Okay. So a lot of really great pearls tossed out there. So, it's been a really fascinating conversation around the design build process, right? And in helping doctors understanding what the design build process consists of and how they can set themselves up for success, whether they're cold starting their very first practice or whether they're looking to, build that dream in the forever home. As we're looking to kind of tiptoe down the path of wrapping up here, I would love for you guys to just share some of your best practices, right? And all of your years of experience, seeing the things that have worked well and set doctors up for success. Conversely, times where perhaps doctors weren't being set up for success. What are some best practices for doctors to adopt as they're looking to construct the dream?
If you would, I'd say, look, it's probably the biggest one. If you had to follow, one, there's a lot of them. It's involvement early. Find your partner, get them involved early. Treat them as a partner, right? Have them and get them. The earlier you get them in to be part of that process of planning, providing financial guidance, understand market conditions, what's happening out there, can really save either money down the road by avoiding some mistakes. Or two, improving the workflow, how your practice runs. It'll be a much smoother experience overall. That would be my one. Chris, you've got a few, I'm sure.
And to Chris's point, there's a way to do that. We do that, Eric, and this is an important part of the Blackstone approach to their clients. Is we spend a fair bit of time upfront evaluating either raw land, if it's going to be a ground up building, or potential new locations. The doctor, I always say, narrow it down to 2 or 3 of your favorite places, and I'll come in and give you my perspective from a contractor's perspective of, can this be done? Can it be done in your budget? And can it be done on time? And that feedback, I think, is invaluable. It also creates a sense of trust and a sense of an advisory role that we take. And it helps it builds that relationship up front. So we know how each other are going to work and how we're going to work through the process. But, there's no cost to getting us involved, to asking for us to go look at a space and give our opinion of it. So that's how you really kind of establish that team up front and get that ball rolling. So that's something that we take a lot of time, and we spend a lot of time with our clients doing, and I think it's invaluable.
Yeah. Really great tips there. And you'll reference back to the team. Really important to surround yourself with a team. Also mentioning involve your team early, right? And realizing that that's part of the process to help optimizing these decisions every step of the way. You got to have all that team on deck. So it starts with, as we find with so many aspects of growing the business, launching the business, transitioning the business, simply being proactive about it, right? Take that first step, pick up a phone, or, go to the internet and reach out and start to build your team, right?
Absolutely.
Something else that you touched on also that's really important as far as tips, particularly on this design build side of things, right? Involving your team early, bring in a contractor early, right? Absolutely. Understand, let that contractor designate, hey, is this even a feasible idea to accomplish on budget and on time? And then if you got Akrinos on your team, trust that they're going to be held to that commitment of saying that they were going to do it.
Absolutely will be.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So fantastic. Well, gentlemen, before we wrap up, for those of our viewers out there that would like to contact you all, and perhaps if y'all might even be open to answering questions for people that are not in your Georgia market, because again, we have a national reach here. But and to our viewers everywhere, again, Chris and the team at Blackstone Design-Build, outstanding team. If folks would like to reach out to you guys to ask any questions, or if they're in Georgia and they're wanting to engage you all to work with them, how can they learn more about Blackstone and contact you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. First thing I would recommend is our website is a key place to start, where you'll find all our contact information, but you'll also see a lot of our more recently completed projects, some testimonials from some clients in the area. So that's blackstonebg.com/Georgia, but feel free to contact me directly at any time. My phone number, 770-262-0007, or contact me via email at chris@blackstonebg.com. And note that we are in other locations. Chris and I run the Georgia market. We do go into some ancillary states around the area, but we are in Florida. We do have presence in the Northeast. And so we do have some sister businesses that we can get you in touch with.
Outstanding. Well, Mr. Chris Bell, Mr. Chris Torchia, thank you all so much for joining us on this episode of Akrinos Access as we explored this topic of constructing the dream, helping doctors to fully understand that design build process. So to our viewers out there, no matter where you are in that journey, starting your first business, buying your first business, growing your established practice, or looking to the future and looking to transition, we hope you found this content valuable. If you're looking for more great practice management tips, head on over to akrinos.com and reach out. We would love to be a part of your team in realizing your dream. And again, huge thank you to Chris and the team from Blackstone Design-Build Group, doing amazing things in that Georgia market. You can learn more at blackstonebg.com/Georgia and reach out to him directly, chris@blackstonebg.com. Well, Chris and thank you all again so much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a great day.